Husband is paranoid about crime to an extreme level ever since we moved to Brooklyn. I am just not sure what to do anymore, especially considering my kids love it here now. Early this year, my dad made a very surprising decision. He was going to move to Florida, and he was going to leave us his brownstone in Brooklyn to raise our family. It's in basically a middle-class neighborhood. It's very classic Brooklyn area, very neighborhood, and a lot of the people there know each other on the streets, lots of corner stores and local restaurants. I used to joke around that it was just like Hey Arnold whenever I would visit as a kid. Both me and my husband were ecstatic. I mean, Jesus, a free brownstone? In a nice walkable neighborhood with good schools? We always thought my dad would be living there another few decades. Dad is only 57, but he is dead set on Florida now. He still gets the rent from the tenants in the bottom floor, so it's not totally ours, but still. At first, moving there was amazing. My husband was able to get a higher paying job very quickly. I had a few childhood neighborhood connections I reconnected with and became friends with some of them. It was hard to adjust to Brooklynese, as me and my husband call it, which is a much faster, more intense form of conversation than we were used to, but the people here are largely delightful and charming and friendly. However, my husband is hyper-focused on issues with crime and drugs. He is souring on the neighborhood. This is a safe neighborhood, even with some grimy parts. Visually, crime rates are low. But he still is convinced it's some now. It's just weird how quickly he has changed his view on the area as time has gone on. It's almost like his standards have changed or something. He always has something to say about stuff now, almost like the mere sight of any possible undesirable elements gets him anxious now. We were driving to Costco in Sunset Park and passed what looked like a sex video shop, and he wouldn't stop going on about how there were no sex video shops in our old area, and how sketchy that was. This was miles away from where we lived, in a warehouse district. It just felt like he was begging to find something to complain about, to confirm his belief that Brooklyn was some. And this happens a lot. It's especially hard because our kids, 14M, 13M, love it here now. They hated the idea of this at first, and now they can't get enough. I think the walkable streets are huge. It gives them so much more to do outside instead of relying on me to drive them everywhere. They used to spend so much time inside, just on their phones or computers, and now they spend a lot of time outside, usually with friends. Kind of a reversal of what is going on with my husband. But with the fear of crime, my husband is demanding we get more strict with the kids in terms of what they can do outside the house. He wants to get trackers on their phones in case they get kidnapped, which he seems to think is some kind of likely possibility here. I am just not sure how to proceed. How do I get him to calm down about this stuff? Both of us don't want to move. But he feels stuck. Financially, it makes sense to stay. We have a big house. He has told me a bunch. Even though he complains, he does not mean to say he wants to move, because he knows how great it is that we get to live here for free, especially with our previous financial struggles. This is like a blessing. I just feel like he is having a mental health crisis based on his anxieties about what city living actually means. Husband is way too anxious about stuff like crime and drugs in our new neighborhood in Brooklyn. Now for the top comments. Have your husband read this? Preface, currently in my mid-30s. Lived here, Brooklyn, New York, for 90% of my life. I've known people who've been shot, stabbed, and kidnapped, thankfully still alive. 100% of those individuals were in their 20s, living the fast life, drugs, gangs, etc. Grew up in a poor family in a very residential area that consisted mostly of lower middle class to mid-middle class West Indian immigrant families from Haiti, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, etc. Loved that area. For the past 4-ish years, me and my German immigrant wife currently live near Church Ave and Nostrand, an area that, even in the 90s, most Brooklyn heads knew was an area troubled with gun violence, crooked street cops, robberies, teenagers, and struggling immigrant families trying to survive. My wife gets weirdly treated better here than I do. Mostly because I'm a big scary black guy with dreads who dresses casually. Anxiety towards your surroundings is more likely to bring bad energy your family's way than anything else. The vast majority of the nearly 9 million people in NYC don't have the experiences that the paranoid New Yorker has. Your only constructive options are to either move away to somewhere like Williamsburg, Fort Greene, etc., or out of Brooklyn altogether. The other option is to be realistic about things and adapt, and make the place your home, and not your mental jail. Also, understand that your fear is mostly irrational, and where that irrational fear comes from. Do not use those nosy neighborhood apps. Those serve no purpose other than to unconstructively soak in every piece of negativity event that has nothing to do with you and likely never will. It's basically neighborhood doom scrolling. Let's say you're insert your race here, family in a poor neighborhood surrounded by scary insert your race here people. The best approach is to be nice to your neighbors and occasionally helpful to your neighbors, especially the seniors, without being weird nor overbearing. Don't be the scared, insert race here, people in the neighborhood. You really don't want that reputation. Know that in even the suburbs, your children are in danger. Unfortunately, people learn this the hard way. The news has a very strong social, political, and economic reason to overreport and underreport certain crimes and areas. Scaring certain people is important for certain people. Know that in even the suburbs, you and your wife are in danger. Unfortunately, people learn this the hard way. The news has a very strong social, political, and economic reason to overreport and underreport certain crimes and areas. Scaring certain people is important for certain people. Teenagers with free time is very dangerous anywhere on this planet. The other factors aren't important because they're not exclusive to one type of area. Make sure your kids' free time is packed. Put them in local after-school and weekend programs, classes, aerobics, skateboarding, traditional school sports, computer science, music, etc. This will also be good for them because they engage with their locals, which prevents irrational fears from setting in. Well, until they grow up and potentially create a homogeneous friends group like a lot of white New Yorkers somehow find a way to do. If you can't afford that, definitely have your teenagers systematically report back to you hourly when out and about. Go skateboarding, video gaming, handballing, tennising, etc. with them when possible. The streets of a city, a suburb, a swamp, whatever is just riddled with bad, great, neutral experiences for teens. You and your wife should consistently go to the local cafe spots and bookstores. Get to know the owners over time, especially during the slow times. Attend local meetups on at least monthly basis. Be mindful of the, seemingly, growing number of mentally ill people. They're mostly non-confrontational, but unfortunately, some of them suffer from paranoia, which can turn confrontational. This is the biggest thing you and your family should keep an eye out for. Remember, 99% of those you're worried about will walk past you and try to live their life, but your irrational fear will see something else. Do your groceries in the local areas, and not the gentrifier hubs. Subtlety: smile at your cashier, and treat them the way you'd treat a cashier at an upper-class suburb that is consistently made up of, insert your race here, people. Subtly pay attention to your surroundings, and learn to spot signs of potential mental illness when you see someone slightly off on the train, bus, and on the sidewalk. Learn how to subtly get away from their area without moving like a rabbit that just spotted a wolf. Understand that there are poor opportunists just like there are rich opportunists. It's important in life to spot the different types of opportunistic behaviors tied to poverty if you are in a low-income area. Never give fuel to the behavior. Bad happens in life. You, your wife, your son, and/or your daughter might bump into an asshole who's ready to throw down. Be an asshole to someone who's ready to throw down. Be an asshole to an even bigger asshole who's ready to throw down. Learn how to realistically de-escalate hot scenarios, especially if the other person is a hothead or has some sort of animosity towards you. This is important. But when you can't, the more likely scenario is getting into a scuffle. Not very likely, but it happens. 99% of the times everyone turns out alright, and has a news story to embellish. To bring things closer, if you and/or your family are perceived to be white, and are in a non-white neighborhood, understand how emotionally taxing, angering, and animosity-fueling certain white supremacy events are for your neighbors. Move smart, empathetically, and like you live where you live, minus disdain for the area. Next comment. Lots of solid advice, but the beginning might be alarming to husband. And hourly reports from teens seems extreme. I'd add to being nice, helpful to neighbors. Doing some kind of outside task activity hobby can help you meet folks and know what's normal in the area. I just moved into a city neighborhood which is mostly people not the same race as me, so I stand out as the new person. My first goal was letting neighbors know I wasn't gonna be a weirdo or asshole, haha. House is a duplex, not a brownstone, and there's more space for yard. So first thing I did was set up an outdoor raised garden bed. Herbs, veggies, and some zinnias BC. They're pretty and stupid easy to grow. You can even just get grow bags, no problem, for smaller areas. Spending an hour or so outside after work every day is A, relaxing, and B, how I got neighbors to know real quick I wasn't one of those scared race here types. People loved it. Anyone walking past, did you buy the house? Roommate did. Every kind of question, comment. What did you plant? What's growing? How hard is it to grow? I watched a YouTuber who gardens. I can see you're fixing the place up, lol. Do you need someone for the grass? Need an exterminator? How long does that take? Once I had bell peppers, okra, cucumbers, and tomatoes coming in, and also zinnia flowers. Anyone who said hi or walked by while I was out there got offered veggies or flowers. With flowers I'd even let people choose. People love it. I got to introduce myself as a good neighbor and also familiarize myself with the comings and goings a bit. Next comment. Has he lived in a big city before, or is this a first-time environment for him? Is he watching or listening to a lot of crime-focused news? Does he take the subway to work and see a bunch of crazy stuff every day? Has he had more trouble making friends, connections here? Been snubbed or messed with in the street? Your tone is sounding really defensive of the neighborhood. You sound like him having these anxieties is ridiculous. Maybe he feels like you're not hearing him out or dismissing him as paranoid, so he has to prove it to you by pointing out more things of concern. Maybe he's feeling unheard and feeling like the world is suddenly getting too big around him to protect his family. I think this is coming from a place of care and concern. Try to hear him out and maybe help him do some of these things that he'd like to do for security and protection. Try to be a bit more supportive of his concerns than trying to make him out like a crazy person and being so defensive of your neighborhood. Next comment. So this happened to me, kind of. We moved from the city to the suburbs, a dream neighborhood. And now I'm suddenly convinced a pedophile will murder me and kidnap our child. Never had this anxiety living in the city. It's not rational. No amount of neighborhood crime statistics can make this new anxiety STFU. I think it comes from a place of trying to adjust to a new place, missing my old place where I felt more in control, and questioning my own biases around suburban crime, and how I got them. I agree with the other posters. Ask your husband why he associates sex shops with a low standard of living. Ask for an example of teenage boys being kidnapped and where he so read about it. Keep asking so he can start connecting his bias to the things that set him off and break those connections. I had to stop rewatching Forensic Files. I can no longer Wikipedia death spiral on serial killers. That morbid curiosity used to be harmless, but now that I am actually living in a situation used as a way to frame this type of crime, these are unhealthy obsessions feeding my paranoia. I also took steps to get used to my neighborhood. I met the neighbors, I researched the local rec center. I still freak out about locking the doors and windows at night. But I keep that little tick to myself so that my daughter doesn't have to suffer from my anxiety. Next comment. Welcome to Brooklyn. This sounds like an awesome opportunity that your family has. As someone who has lived in this borough my whole life, and have been perfectly safe, your husband is overreacting big time. I always felt there's more risk in low-populated, suburban towns than densely populated places. Your husband is probably having difficulties for many reasons adjusting to this massive life change, and is just fixating on crime instead of exploring why he is feeling so anxious about this change in generally. Couples counseling can't hurt for you both to navigate this together. To echo another NYC comment, or New York City is intense for young people to grow up in. There's a lot of different paths that young people can take, and some of them involve getting into the wrong crowd's drugs. There is a fine balance of giving your kids freedom to explore, but also keeping an eye that they don't get involved in some. You'll learn this balance within later in middle school and definitely high school. Anyways, it might be ideal to do some family activities together, go to the Met, daily walks in Prospect Park, overall exploring the area together. Also getting your husband involved in some community activities where he can hang with other Brooklyn dads, so he can feel like part of the community as opposed to being afraid.